Good afternoon and welcome to Executive Dialogue 6. Can district cooling solutions help cool Indian cities and neighborhoods more sustainably? At the very outset, I wish to record my sincere thanks to our platinum sponsor Danfoss, gold sponsor The Breathe, and silver sponsors Saint Gobain and Smart Jewels for making Feed possible. I would also like to record my thanks to our networking and outreach partners, Griha Ishre Rama and the India Smart Grid Forum. In terms of general housekeeping, we will open the floor for Q&A in the last 10 minutes. So please keep sending in your questions through the chat box on the right side of your screens. And before we start, there is a poll question that you would see, and this is to sort of get a sense of the type of audience members so that our speakers can curate their remarks accordingly. Can we have the poll up, please? All right. It is my pleasure to introduce to you our expert speaker this afternoon, Mr. Atul Bagai, Head, United Nations Environment Programme, Country Office, India. Mr. Bagai joined UN Environment's Ozone Action Programme under the Montreal Protocol as the Regional Officer for South Asia in 2000 and served as Senior Regional Coordinator to build the capacity of sub-regional networks in Asia. Mr. Bagai, it's a pleasure to have you with us this afternoon, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, thanks. Thanks for inviting UNEP for this very, very important and topical executive dialogue on district cooling solutions and how they can help cool Indian cities and neighborhoods more sustainably. And I understand that I will need to set a little bit of a context and what UNEP is doing, and then there is a very lively chat and discussion with four very distinguished panelists, and the whole session being moderated by my friend Marcus, who in this scenario is one of the top experts in cooling issues globally. And I've had the honor and pleasure of working with him now for almost 20 years. I'm thankful to the organizers, BEE, AEEE, and GIZ for inviting UNEP and highlighting some of the work that we are doing on district cooling, which is fast becoming an important area of work for cooling the space that is being built in India. In terms of context, I would certainly like to highlight that over the next decade or so, India, which is arguably already the world's most heat-stressed country, will become much hotter, with large proportion of its population exposed to conditions that cross the what are called the workability and survivability thresholds. Left unchecked, this heat could expose up to almost 200 million people to lethal heat waves in the 2030s, rob 2% of the GDP and 34 million jobs almost. Within the Indian context, if we look at the Indian Cooling Action Plan, one of the most pioneering documents by a government, by a country, the demand for space cooling is expected to grow almost 11 times between now and 2037. It's a cliche now that whatever is the space built already will get doubled in the next 20 years or so. And which also means, and as per IEA, by 2050, India is going to be the largest consumer of space cooling in the world. What implications is this going to have? And why are we talking of district cooling today? The implications certainly would be on energy security, on reliability. It could be a disaster for the environment, for water use, for air pollution, refrigerants, and carbon emissions. So, under this framework of the coal coalition, which UNEP has set up, uh, UNEP, in partnership with Rocky Mountain Institute, has developed a Beating the Heat, a sustainable cooling handbook for cities, with support from the Global Covenant of Mayors and the Clean Cooling Collaborative. And in today's discussions, this publication and the kind of scenarios it brings in could be a very important component of discussion and guidance in terms of what can be done to beat the heat. This handbook was released at COP26, and it is a first of its kind compendium of urban cooling solutions. Following this release, UNEP now, with RMI and National Institute of Urban Affairs, and with support from the government of Denmark, are developing a program to quickly deploy technical assistance and concrete solutions that will cool the Indian cities and people. In fact, as part of this overall framework, UNEP and RMI will be supporting MOA to raise awareness of sustainable cooling with actually all levels of government, center, state, and city, public real estate sector, and also the private sector. And certainly, this whole toolkit and this document that has been developed is going to be a very important part of this whole program. Initially, for 2 pilot cities, the program will provide a strategy for cooling for both existing and upcoming urban areas through passive and active approaches. It will integrate with the city's master plan and the new activities on district cooling systems or uptake of building codes and labeling programs, issues on urban heat and resilience, solutions which are nature-based, mainstreaming with municipal bylaws, utility planning, public procurement guidelines. A lot of these issues will be addressed as part of this program. Now, district energy systems, which includes district heating, district cooling, and cogeneration, have already been recognized internationally as the most sustainable and cost-effective means of supplying this energy in dense areas. But in India, yet their full potential really remains untapped. I was watching just before the program started a very nice video of the Breathe on advantages of district cooling and all the key buildings and cities that have taken up this technology in a big way. It's not that India has not looked at this technology, but the offtake certainly has been very, very slow. And actually, ESL and UNEP, with support from the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and the Ministry of Power, and several other partners, including AEEE, under the District Energy and Cities Initiative, are supporting the market development for district cooling in India. And I'm very happy to say that in India, the initiative has been supporting the conception and development of some of the country's first district cooling projects in our pilot cities of Rajkot, Thane, and Hyderabad Pharma City. We also have a very good example in the Gift City in Ahmedabad of this technology. I would highlight that the reason why district cooling is not taking up is because India's market for district cooling is not very simple. The pace of real estate in cities, the novelty of this technology, and the diverse barriers, and I'll highlight a few of those that exist, makes shifting the city's industry in the country to district cooling all the harder. what are the barriers? And some of the barriers that we have been able to outline as part of our experience with the partners over the last 2 3 years are the limited knowledge and capacity, regulatory barriers, immature markets for climate friendly mechanical cooling solutions, complex multi-jurisdictional governance levels, a limited number of trained building trade workers, data gaps, and a rapidly evolving real estate market are certain barriers that have not let this technology being adopted pan India or in more areas so quickly. Whereas, considering the kind of heat stress that the country is going to face in the coming years, this kind of a technology solution should have been adopted much earlier and at a much larger scale. And I'm happy that this today's conversation is looking at some of these aspects very closely. And I think this executive dialogue will go a long way to come up with not only understanding what the barriers are, but coming up with solutions of how to address them. And I see the panel, the four members who are there on the panel, represent the key stakeholders that will impinge upon the district cooling system implementation in India. So UNEP really looks forward to work with the Government of India, with the state governments, with cities, with GIZ, AEEE, and the industry, ISHRE, and other organizations to bring about, and the private sector industry, which is working in the cooling space on these issues. To conclude, I would like to commend the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, ESL and Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs for the close engagement with UNEP and partners on this very, very critical and crucial topic. And we really look forward to ADB, World Bank, EU, OECD, GIZ, AEEE, and other agencies to support and engage for district cooling work in India. I really look forward to listening to the four panelists and the moderation by Marcus and some very interesting discussions. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Atul. And yes, indeed, almost 20 years. It's shocking that we are still discussing the same issues, and I think it's taking another decades to work on this. But yes, this is really an important topic, and I must really appreciate the work which UNEP has done in district energy and district heating, district cooling, not only in India, but also in many other countries, but particularly in India. I think a lot of work has already been done. And that is great because now our Bureau of Energy Efficiency recently also has just constituted a technical committee on district cooling. I think we will hear a little bit more from our panelist Aditya Gupta soon on that. And yeah, we really would like to see district cooling to happen in India, because the future cannot be that more and more individual split air conditioning units are getting deployed all over the country. I mean, in India, we even do not have a 10% penetration of air conditioning in the overall country. And as there is economic growth in the next decade, the budget has just been released. And this also has quite some trajectory in terms of growth, more than 9% just in the next year. And then till 2030, a lot more is to happen, but that will also then manifest in many more buildings and much more air conditioning. And also, I mean, it's self-enforcing due to climate change and the rising temperatures. Air conditioning becomes even more a necessity. Maybe in India, one should already speak of it should be a basic right to have cooling, as it is important for everything. But yeah, as I said, individual split air conditioning cannot be the solution for the urban areas. Therefore, there's so much potential in district cooling in terms of energy efficiency gains, also in terms of refrigerant use, and in providing cooling as a service. As I said, UNEP has done already tremendous work in this and is doing with all the partners mentioned. And we, as GIZ, as the implementing agency of the government of Germany, also are supporting the government of India, the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, in this. And many of the points which you just mentioned, the barriers are these are also part of that initiative, which is financed by the International Climate Initiative of the federal government of Germany. And we are also open to collaboration with everyone here. And I think all together we will and shall be able to overcome those barriers. So let me introduce our excellent panel of today. And we hopefully also then will see the barriers which Atul Bagai mentioned just now from various angles, from the angle of the policymakers, the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, then from someone who has already implemented a district cooling project, a very nice one in Gift City, and then also from the perspective of, let's say, one of the most expert companies implementing projects for district cooling, Tabreed, and then also from the perspective of distribution utility, because that is also very interesting, I think, for the distribution companies. They are already providing services as utility by delivering electricity, but going into other areas like cooling could be very, very interesting for distribution companies, as it serves a lot of cross-cutting issues as well. And district cooling can also then support peak load shaving in the peak hours when air conditioning is contributing to the surge in electricity consumptions. So let me introduce the speakers. We have Aditya Gupta. He is director in the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, Ministry of Power. In his role, he is responsible for the international cooperation, demand-side management, financing of energy efficiency initiatives, planning and statistics. And he's also responsible for coordinating with the other ministries on technical matters. And he is also a long time in the Bureau, and we also have worked together for a long time. And it's always a pleasure to have Arijit Sengupta here. So Arijit, I have two questions to you. One is about district cooling systems, as already mentioned by Atul Bagai. They can play an important role in the further development in India, in particular with regard to net zero and decarbonization. So what do you think, or what does the Bureau think, how district cooling can actually contribute to that? And then a second question would be how the Bureau is trying to support the uptake of the district cooling in India in the coming years. Arijit, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Marcus. And also at the outset, I would like to thank AEEE for providing the Bureau of Energy Efficiency with the opportunity to share our views and our initiatives on this important topic of district cooling. Also, I would like to acknowledge the comments made by Dr. Atul Bagai. And of course, I would like to hear from my fellow panelists as well regarding their views and all. So I will just try and answer the questions put forth by Marcus, and I will just try to answer them, jointly. So if we look at the overall scenario, and if we look at the recent Panchamrit announcements made by our Honorable Prime Minister during the COP26. Then net zero by 2070 is, one of the most important tasks that we have in hand. And we are all aware about the fact that if we are to achieve net zero by 2070, then it has to be done through sustainable cooling. And that's why sustainable cooling becomes an important part. Also, before I come into the topic of district cooling, just a few facts and figures. Of course, they are well documented also in the India Cooling Action Plan. So the nationwide cooling demand in terms of tons of refrigeration, if we see, it is projected to grow around 8 times. That is approximately 970 million TR as compared to 120 million TR in 2017-18. Similarly, if we look at and of course, the major chunk of this growth is going to happen in the building sector, which is going to contribute to around 11 times the growth. And that means, as compared to the baseline of 65 million TR of cooling demand in the building sector in 2017-18, we are nearly going to see the building sector cooling demand to grow to around 700 million TR by 2037-38. So in a nutshell, the point that I'm trying to make, that space cooling, the growth, there will be growth in space cooling, but the important task in hand, as far as the Bureau of Energy Efficiency is concerned, and also as far uh, as the country is concerned, is how to ensure that this cooling happens sustainably, and we don't peak as much as projected, and we can limit it. And one of the ways, of course, to promote technologies like district cooling. And of course, India, we have heard Dr. Bagai also speaking about the India Cooling Action Plan, wherein this not in kind technologies such as district cooling has been mentioned. And we are all aware about the benefits of district cooling. It is a modern and efficient way to air condition cluster of buildings. It avoids the capital cost of installing chillers, and also it aggregates the cooling demands of multiple buildings. So therefore it creates economies of scale. And in this regard, of course, with the Bureau of Energy Efficiency and the GIZ, as Marcus mentioned, they have started an initiative on advancing the agenda of energy efficient and environment friendly DCS. So, and one of the significant activities envisaged under the project, of course, is to demonstrate the benefits of district cooling system in a few pilot projects, and which can provide us with some data-backed evidence, so that we can able to formulate some policies and business models, and ultimately result in uptake of the district cooling systems in India. So, and of course, we believe that if we can uptake the contribution of district cooling systems in a country, we will play a huge role in achieving, in making our country meet the climate ambitions, and also the net zero target by 2070. Now, coming to of course, the next question of what are the initiatives that the Bureau of Energy Efficiency is trying to take to further uptake the adoption and implementation of DCS in India. So, in this regard, of course, as Marcus mentioned, a technical committee has been constituted under the chairmanship of Director General of Bureau of Energy Efficiency. And I would mention here that this technical committee is carrying forward the work that was started by UNEP and ESL. Yeah, as Dr. Bagai also mentioned in the earlier GF project. So we are continuing that work, and since this is a new program and the new work program that has been recently approved by the government, wherein the Bureau and the GIZ are coming together to promote the uptake of the district cooling. So we have constituted a technical committee with whose main goal will be to review the national development goals and initiatives containing district cooling factors, then assess the current policies, tools, and implementation at the local level, recognize the successful activities and actions, and then identify the challenges. That is the most important thing in the existing policies, provide guidance on the development of district cooling guidelines. Now, here I would like to highlight that yes, when we are saying that we will try to develop some district cooling guidelines, already a draft guidelines has been prepared in association with the GIZ and also AAA, and we have circulated it also to all the committee members, and we have received few comments as well. So maybe in the next two couple of months, what we are planning is that we'll just try and organize a stakeholder consultation where we can interact with a more larger audience, and we'll try and finalize the district cooling guidelines as soon as possible, because we have all heard about the challenges that the district cooling segment has faced, and we believe that maybe a guidelines issued by the government can to a certain extent facilitate the uptake of the district cooling system. We'd also like to engage with the national and international experts through technical consultations and peer-to-peer dialogue. Of course, this will involve sharing of global experiences. And another activity which the technical committee is supposed to do is to facilitate an enabling environment for the stakeholders at the national, state, and local level. And of course, that will ensure involvement in policy formulation as well as in the implementation level. So, I mean, these are the various steps that the Bureau of Energy Efficiency has taken. And of course, we know that this is a topic which is also new as far as the Bureau of Energy Efficiency is concerned. And we hope that we can really facilitate in uptake of DCS in the country. And we all know that there's a lot of potential that exists. So we hope that with these various initiatives and with the active involvement and participation of all the crucial stakeholders, we would be able to achieve our goals. Thank you very much, and over to you, Marcus.
Thanks a lot, Arijit. And it's very heartening to see that the Bureau is really supporting this, the deployment of that technology. And it's a major milestone also that that technical committee has been established. And yes, indeed, we are working on the guidelines, and that would be quite another milestone to have those guidelines available for everyone. And and I think it's also important that, as Atul already said, we need to have more knowledge also shared with the persons working in the local urban bodies, in the municipalities, so that in future they also have an informed opinion on the technology and include that in their initial feasibility studies. So let's now move on to Rajiv Sharma. He is the Vice President, Engineering and Construction at Gujarat International Finance Tech City, aka Gift City. And he has also an impressive more than 30-year career of service in senior positions in the Indian government and abroad for various engineering projects. And currently he is responsible for the design and development of the district cooling system for the Gift City in India. And Rajiv, we are really keen on learning some of the challenges you would have experienced already, but also your perspective on the technology based on those experiences. So the two questions which I have to you are that, one is, please let us know some of those challenges in commissioning and also in the operation cycle, and how did you overcome those, and how you think are new projects who would actually try to also bring district cooling into India, what should be taken care of in those projects when they are coming up. Rajiv, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marcus, and thank you everyone, AAA, for providing this platform, which I personally think is very essential at this time to start with the district cooling business as soon as possible, launching it in the practical ground, more and more conferences and webinars. My heart comes out and says, we need to do something now. It's getting late. That's my personal view on the whole scenario. But anyway, even these platforms are going to really help in a larger perspective. I was hearing from Atul, and they have already done some very important work by, as I understand, they have issued a toolkit for Indian cities for district cooling. I haven't gone through that yet, but I think it will be a very useful document if an organization like UNEP has issued. And the second thing I want to appreciate before I start with is and thank Arjit and his department, including AEEE and you, Marcos, to start with this technical committee to form the policy for district cooling. That's the backbone of the whole launch of the system in India. Otherwise, with a flexible spine, it would not sustain. So that's a wonderful start, and I believe it's going to go the right way. With the questions, Marcos, that you have presented, I have a 5P answer. So there are 5Ps which would give you the challenges in my system. And if you allow me, I will highlight the challenge and also give you the prospect of how we are addressing these. Also, we have not been fully capable of solving all of our technical issues. But yes, we have started to sort them out one by one. So the first one is power. Power is about 80% of the entire cost of the district cooling system. And that's primarily, we say, is the raw material for us. So when we start a district cooling, let's assume 10,000 ton for a 180,000 ton plant. If we start even with a 10,000 ton plant, the power at the initial stage comes to us as a commercial power. There are no discounts from any discom or no other way. Even the thermal energy storage tank, so to say, don't really help us much in reducing the power cost, as people has a vision that we can generate in the lean period and deliver in the peak period. That really doesn't matter too much because the masses are too large, and we cannot imagine to install too large a section of TES or thermal storage energy. It does help, but it really doesn't help that much. Um, then we see that somehow, while we engage our power suppliers, we can engage with them to have a dilution on the fixed cost, initially fixed cost, which is actually very high for a district cooling operation. While it is in the nascent stage, beginning, we need to look into that fixed cost, but that's very damaging because we do not in Gift City are leveling the fixed cost of the full capacity of the buildings on the tonnage that they are demanding from us. So we are thinking on those lines to look into something from the discoms to work on the dilution of the fixed cost in the initial years. Then I think there is a possibility of talking to the government and asking them to waive the duty because this is a noble cause. You know, we are reducing a huge amount of carbon footprint and reducing the global warming impact and all. So I think government should definitely see the reduction of duty in the initial 5 to 10 years on the tariff model. Then another challenge that we are now facing, Marcos, as you know, that Gift City comprise of commercial and residential blocks both. It's very challenging to receive the power on the commercial rates and then deliver the air conditioning on the nominal rates for the residential blocks, which forms a large part of the Gift City. And I believe in all upcoming district cooling systems, it is very necessary to have the residential block connected to the commercial venture, because then is only when we can get the full utilization factor of our chillers. Otherwise, the chillers mostly will remain idle on the off-peak time. So, but then this challenge of commercial rates and residential rates, we still have to solve it. So that's one of the. Besides this, we also have some smaller challenges which are now making sense to us. Is the quality of power. So if the quality of power is not good, the large chiller that we have about 2,500 tons of chiller with 1.6 megawatt motor, if the power trips, even for the slightest thing, even though we have barriers in place, the chiller goes down, the chiller comes up, it takes additional cost, and that impacts my IKW on that particular day. And then, besides the quality of power, consistency of power also is an issue. These are the challenges that we are having, Marcus. And so we are in touch with the government to look into how we can work on the duty reduction on the initial phases. On the power purchase, we think we should have the right to purchase power directly from the grid, or else with the local discoms, and have some sort of a long-term agreement for power. Otherwise, it is a big challenge for us to continue to remain in red. We have recently commissioned a 240 kilowatt power solar power system, and we are looking forward to around 1.5 megawatt power system another place. So this will bring down our cost and improve our sustainability factor. I think besides this, we have already worked on trigeneration. Use of waste heat is still on our agenda, and geothermal is going to come sometime later. But those are what we have to be doing on power side. Next is the production. Production is a generation of the TRHR. Marcus, tell me if I am too long, but I'll try to cut short my discussion. So second is generation. So if I do not have initial loads,
maybe one more minute, then we need to move on. Yeah, thank you.
sure. And then the important part, second important part is the initial loads should be available for me to continue to generate the tonnage. However, that's not so in all initial phases of the project. So with my understanding, if we say, for example, out of 150,000 tons of air conditioning, we have installed 10,000 tons. Out of 10,000 tons, if the day one, when I commission my plant, if I have 2,500 tons ready to be served, and then year on year, if I have 20 to 25% HVAC growth, I can be a sustainable unit. Within 4 to 5 years, 5 to 6 years, I can have a operational break-even point, and from there I can sustain. Couple of three more things, Marcus. One is policy that Arjit is already working on, and that's the again a key thing, because it brings too much that is immediately required. Provider is like the component provider, the large size pipe size suppliers, the large valve size suppliers, large chiller suppliers. They're not in India yet in so large a quantity. So competition is an issue. Even the vendors for such large projects are not available in India. So that's a challenge, and we are looking into Asia as well as throughout the country for that. And the last but not least is we are realizing that positioning of the district cooling plant into the city and the supporting utilities layout and the positioning in the city is also equally important. So all these five factors are the challenges which we must continue to see while we establish a successful plant. Thank you, Marcus.
Thanks a lot, and that was a lot. I think, that was much more detailed information to the barriers and challenges. I think the next speaker, Sudhir Perla from Tabrid, he is the country head for Tabrid India. He has more than 20 years of experience and all focused on building systems, technologies, and currently is leading the efforts to mainstream district cooling as a potential solution for cities in India. And Sudhir, as you heard Rajiv just now, I think, you as one of the biggest system integrators that has been working in Middle East, what do you think are the success factors in those markets, and what do you think can be the learnings for India, in particular, having heard what Rajiv just said?
Sure. Hi everyone, and hi, thanks, Marcus, for the question. I would say that the breed as a district cooling utility. Whilst we are present in the GCC, between Stabreed and our shareholder NG, we are actually in fact present in about 25 countries, either providing district heating or district cooling, and in fact all are through concession models. And if I look back at what were the success factors there, and what the challenges are for India specifically. I mean, I would say that most of those markets, most of these countries, I mean, of course, district cooling or district heating is either regulated or it's not regulated, right? I mean, to the extent it is regulated and you have public utilities as well, then the uptake is much faster because there are more societal costs included as a part of the equation to look at this, and it is mandated in those places. So, of course, district cooling can penetrate much faster. But in India's construct right now, since there is no regulation as yet in place, and if you have to look at the Middle East as an example, right? I mean, I think what was fortunate for the Middle East was basically a big part of the real estate boom and all the built environment. The construction started, I would say, at the same time in the early 2000s. So in the early 2000s was when there was a lot of city building happening, whether it was Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Doha, and many cities in Saudi and so on and so forth. And Tabreed having created the district cooling industry in the GCC in Abu Dhabi to begin with. It was, whether it was fortunate or divine timing, I don't know. But I mean, we established the first district cooling plant in 1998. And just a few years after that was when this massive real estate boom happened in all these parts of the world, where there was no regulation, there was no government intervention at all. It was all mostly developer by developer engagement, master plan by master plan engagement, and then accordingly planning district cooling as a solution through concessions that we have right now in place, right? So, I mean, it was mostly private sector led, but because there was such a strong, I would say, nation or city building happening in a very short span of time, there was a possibility to be able to plan this and execute projects of this scale and size in a fairly short period of time, right? So that was, of course, the things that that worked in the favor of the district cooling industry, I would say, in the GCC countries. And yeah, not to say that there were no mistakes. There were, of course, a lot of mistakes made by most of the players. And there were ultimately several stakeholders who benefited, several stakeholders, including end customers, who didn't benefit because of the lack of regulation. And so, drawing parallels to India, I would say that, I mean, most of the markets from what we've seen, it never was a regulatory push or a legislative push that created the market to begin with. It was always some case studies, some pilots, some projects. And then after the industry started growing in a certain fashion, then the need to regulate this came about, because these are natural monopolies that you're creating. You have several stakeholders and benefits beyond just the district cooling provider, the real estate developer, and the end users, which is when most of the governments realized that there has to be some form of regulation in place, right? So I think, I mean, that's how these markets developed. So in one sense, expecting India to take the lead to come out with something even before the district cooling industry has taken off, probably maybe a bit too ambitious, is what I think we are beginning to realize more and more and more, right? So, I mean, but nevertheless, I mean, it's great to see some of the initiatives on the ground to try looking at how best this can actually penetrate further into the market. But the good thing is, I mean, is that unlike renewables and like solar and so on, which required a lot of regulatory push, including financial incentives for the first couple of years, for a decade or so, including in India, till they got to grid parity. Here we are all well aware this is more cost effective. India as a country is cost conscious. And in general, the mindset in India has to be more frugal and to use resources much better. So even that part of the mindset is there. And you know that, I mean, it has environmental benefits and so on and so forth. So the reason why, I mean, so I don't think there should be too much of an intervention, I mean, in a country like India from trying to push this, other than setting rules, which I think it was great to see Arjit mention that BE is looking at that. So by playing a rule setting role, by trying to at least have this go along with the likes of ECBC or the likes of already current regulation in place, or even in the budget announcement, was great to actually look at the focus on urban planning, right? So, I mean, if through these new centers of excellence, for example, there is a broader focus on integrated energy planning in which district cooling fits in, and the bylaws are suitably amended in cities and so on, I feel that alone is a good enough impetus in broad part to kind of at least create a slightly more enabling environment, right? Keeping the regulatory part aside, on the ground specifically, I mean, I think a lot of the large developers are, of course, cost conscious. A lot of them are very, very savvy. They all, of course, want to make sure that their buildings are more and more greener. There is a good focus on green buildings. So the momentum is already there. And there we've opened Tabreed India. It's been about 2 years now. And I think where we have been seeing the challenges mostly is, I would say, mostly in mindset and awareness, where current market participants, from consultants to the OEMs to the developers, even if say the consultants and OEMs are aware of this, they would only do projects on the basis of the remit given to them by a developer, right? And a developer in turn doesn't take a long-term view. His view is mostly because he takes a lot of market real estate risks, and projects have long timelines. He takes a rather short-term view because, of course, that's how the real estate market is in India. And when the views are much more short-term, then their ability to plan long-term and have a more aggregated system kind of doesn't come into play. So on one hand, you have things like no rules in place for regulation and so on for cities mandating district cooling. And at the private side, on the B2B side, you don't have the appetite or the vision to necessarily think long term. There are certain instances where that's happening, but not necessarily as much as what it should be in the overall construct of things, right? So that's where we see the current situation where, as the breed as a private player, we are seeing market gaps. And then when you go into a bit more detail, of course, there are a whole lot of regulatory gaps because this is not considered as a utility, including aspects like, for example, electricity tariffs. You have a district cooling plant serving commercial and residential. You buy commercial tariffs, but you're serving a residential building, which has residential tariffs. You have GST on this. And so I think there are certain inadvertent, I would say, policy bottlenecks that in turn creates issues in uptake of this, right? So that's where we see. So I think, I mean, I would look at
Thanks
it.
a lot. Just one more question, because I think that is interesting for everyone here. Tabreed has partnered with IFC recently for district cooling. What are your plans together with IFC regarding district cooling in India? Do you have already some concrete plans?
Of course, yeah. And like I said, I mean, we are committed for the long term in India, Marcus. And the things, I mean, so we've spent 3 years so far still trying to create the market, and nothing has materialized in the shape and form that we want to. But with IFC, essentially what we've already announced and what we're looking at is basically we've committed to invest about $400 million over the next 5 years, right, in district cooling projects. Our current assumption is regulation will not happen, or at least there will not be any kind of changes that force cities to start mandating district cooling. So we are primarily focusing on B2B conversations, essentially with large private developers and so on. And we think with the $400 million over the next 5 years, the projects may not be as large as what we see in other parts of the world, but we think that, I mean, we would be able to develop about district cooling projects for about 120,000 tons, which basically means we would be serving about 50 million square feet roughly, I mean, of buildings. And that 50 million square feet, 120,000 tons would translate to maybe a 120 to 150 megawatt power demand reduction, including thermal storage and so on and so forth, right? Which essentially translates to about a 5 million ton CO2 reduction. So I think, I mean, it's fairly ambitious that, I mean, in the next 5 years, we think we'll do at least 10 projects, of course, all smaller than what we'd like it to be, but nevertheless, we still want to get started. Then mostly be private sector led with other developers in mind, $400 million capex deployed through long-term cooling as service concessions and associated savings in energy industry. Right? So that's what our current plan is right now.
Great. Thanks a lot. And I think we are all following that initiative, and I guess you will keep us all posted also in the next events and as well as on your website. Great, thanks. We have to rush a little bit as we are running out of time. So the last panelist is Amit Jain from Tata Power Trading Company, but he is actually the head of the ESCO business with Tata Power Trading, and he leads the ESCO vertical, and he has also more than 20 years of experience in the sector, also in O&M, project development, execution, etc. And he's actively involved in IoT-based solutions and working on feasibility assessments of large-scale solutions under energy as a service. And Amit, you have heard also the other speakers. There is a lot of desire that cooling can actually come as a service, and that discoms definitely can play a role in this, and it may also benefit the discoms. So learning from those experiences by Gift City and Tabreed, what exactly do you think could be the role of a discom in making cooling as a service and district cooling a reality, and what are the challenges you foresee in the implementation?
Yeah. Thanks, Marcus. So I would be sharing my views basis two heads. One is as a discom, and second is as a business plus sustainability requirement of district cooling. So, as a utility wherein power is being supplied, there, if a DCS project is there, then a utility can very well provide the data of energy consumed in that particular territory, how the city is growing, what could be the demand pattern, what benefit because of DCS can bring in. Like earlier panelist has said that a dip in the maximum demand, dip in the overall capacity, the demand side management by having a storage in the DCS. So there the utility can very well play a role. A, it can very well provide inputs while designing a pre-feasibility on a gain to the customer on account of lower capex on system infra, on account of lower tie-up of power because the overall demand is getting shifted and there is a dip in demand also. So the sourcing of power can be on a long-term basis with a lower quantum. It can bring in efficiency and saving for the power user of the discom. And certainly, discom can be a part of the consortium who is developing the project. And since it is reaching out to the meters of the user, it can very well reach out as a service agent or the last mile connectivity to the user for the cooling as well. The challenges which I see the sourcing of power, wherein Gift City had an issue that the power is a bit costlier or something. There, the discom can play a role subject to the approval of the regulators. It can get a cheaper, a cleaner power or a dedicated power. So it can bring in the consistency, reliability of power and a lower cost of power, subject to approval of the regulator where the power is being classified under which category because it is serving to the n number of customers. The challenges which I see, we need to have certain successful use cases. That's the crux. The use cases could be in various categories. Captive, wherein builders or SEZ could be a good use cases. The DLF has come up, the Hiranandani, which has a large land pie development for a very long duration, 10 to 15 years. They develop the project in a
I think we have some technical issue.
yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you again.
Yeah. So the category could be two big basket. One is the captive users, wherein SEZ or a developer, a land developer could be a potential use case. And second could be the large scale adoption by the utilities. Utilities means a city, a municipal corporation or a urban planner. There has to be a nodal agency. We have seen in the power plants, PFC act as a nodal agency. It gets all the clearances, environment, rail, coal, evacuation, land approval, environment clearances. All 5 or 6 clearances, they gets it. And later on a bidding basis, it's being transferred to the power plant developer. It has happened in UMPP Ultra Mega. In the similar manner, as a seeding agent, some agency can be nominated. It can get all the stakeholders on the board from different segments for a greenfield, brownfield, for a captive, for SEZ, 4 or 5 use cases, and accelerate it as a catalyst to showcase to the hundreds of the people who can bring in. Once the business is successful, basis some incentive, e-certs incentive would be there through B thing. There could be some tariff, preferential tariff. There could be some taxation benefit of AD, accelerated depreciation, or the soft landing to have a seeding effect for initial 1 or 2 or 3 success stories. And because of the efficiency in the system, there is a efficiency of more than 60-70% on a technical basis. The scaling, the dip in the power, how those sharings are being shared, savings are being shared among the various stakeholders, the developer, the utility, or the client, the business will flourish. So the catalyst has to be there in the system, sir. And Later on, once the fitness of the model is there in all the cases, it will be there. To summarize the successful use cases in a nodal agency.
Great. Thanks a lot, Amit. So we have 5 minutes left, and there were 3 questions actually so far. The first question was how district cooling can be promoted in Indian cities where air conditioning is only for summer and monsoon months. And where is the competitive advantage of district cooling compared to split ACs or central ACs? I think I addressed that to Sudhir. Sudhir, would you like to answer that, please?
Yeah, sure, Marcus. And I think, I mean, the situation of cooling requirement in summer months is not unique to India. It's pretty much, I would say, in most parts of the world. I mean, in fact, one of the benefits of district cooling is the variability that it actually offers. So we have certain systems right now, for example, where in the winter months, the loads go as less as 5% of the installed capacity. And in summer months, it goes as high as 100%. And district cooling systems inherently offer that flexibility to be able to go up or down. And the right way to look at this is basically whether you use your air conditioner only for a few months or for the whole year, you still are buying the equipment, you still need to have AMCs, you still need to pay the electricity bills and so on. Instead of each individual person or house buying that individually, you add that all up. If somebody as an aggregator puts that together in one place, the capex is lesser, the opex is lesser, efficiency is better. So what an individual house would be paying would actually, in fact, be much cheaper than them doing it individually because of the benefits of scale.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Then the second question was whether the generation of district cooling based on standalone plants, or can it also be done by industries and electricity generation plants? And then a follow-up question on that is, in such a case, are there cities in India that could fit this scenario? Yeah, I mean, we heard it also in the presentation from Rajiv that waste heat could be used, and then if you have waste heat available, yes, that makes a lot of sense. Yes, I think looking for Indian cities who would have perhaps good preconditions, that makes a lot of sense. You yourself, I think, Panagiotis, you mentioned Jamshedpur, that this could be interesting to look into. But probably there are others. Tata at present is looking in Bhubaneswar also what is possible. I'm sure that there are such opportunities, but it needs.
I can give a good example as well, Marcus, of another Indian city. I mean, again, the city of Kochi, for example, right, where you have an LNG regasification terminal,
yes,
which is releasing a lot of waste coal into the atmosphere. It's captured
absolutely.
that, and so I think lots and lots of cases where industrial can be combined.
Yes, great. Then the last question is that goes to Rajiv from Mr. Prabhat Goyal. Measurement and billing of thermal energy removed is an integral part of district cooling. Dubai faced it for years, and unless we take care, this becomes a major problem for consumers. Did you face any challenges on this issue as well?
Oh, yes, Marcus. This is a very important aspect, but people so far have not touched. Only those people will talk about it who are deep into the business themselves. So, yes, we are tiding over this issue now. Initially, we definitely had a challenge, but now with support of technology and better measuring equipments and some more policy decisions put in place, we have sort of tied over this. Still, there are more to come as we introduce residential metering into the district cooling system. That will be another thing that we will have to cross over, and then subsequently it will be a settled out thing for us.
Great, thanks. So unfortunately, we have already come to the end of the session. 1 hour is definitely not enough to really look into this extremely interesting and important topic. Nevertheless, I hope for the audience that they could pick up some important points. I think I do not even have time to sum it up really professional. I just can say we have the government already looking into it, and work is on the way. to develop guidelines and also to develop a district cooling code. That's very good. We have very good players like Tabrid partnering with IFC and putting money into the sector, despite the regulatory sector not yet completely developed. We have an excellent example in Gift City where we can learn from a lot already. And we have discoms in the country like Tata Power who are willing to look into it and to also synergize on this, in particular when it comes to peak load shaving and other benefits, and provide cooling as a service. So I think we are pretty much well set up. And so please all stay tuned, in particular with regard to those guidelines, which will be published very soon. And yeah, then there will be follow-up events, and you will come to know. And please leave your email addresses so that you can get informed, and then we will see through that you get more information and can follow it and maybe implement also your district cooling project. Thanks a lot, and I give it back to Akash.
Thank you very much, Marcus. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to you, firstly, the session chair, and then our speakers for this executive dialogue, and also to our conference delegates for tuning in. I hope you found the discourse both engaging as well as exciting. And I hope that you will stay with us for the rest of the day at FEED, and feel free to visit the exhibition zone and utilize the networking opportunities during the breaks between the sessions. I wish all of you a very happy and fruitful conference. Thank you very much. Bye.